Hello, I'm Matt.
And I'm Keith, and in this one we're talking about more woodworking unpopular opinions. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
So how are you then, Matt?
Well, not great, to be honest, Keith. So I should warn people not to sit too close to their podcast player because I have COVID and my voice is incredibly sexy, so try not to fall in love with me. After we spoke last, for the bank holiday, I went to a wedding, and it's the most people I've seen in over 2 years, and I came back with a sore throat and then tested positive. So, yeah, I've had a bit of a rough week, even though I'm triple vaccinated, which I guess means it could have been a lot worse, but I've just got a bit of a cold, really, but it's laid me up, and you shouldn't operate machinery when you're feeling under the weather. But with filming things, if I'm feeling rough, I don't want to be on camera. So I've kind of had the week off, which drives me insane. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. I've been working on my workbench stuff this week, so bench dogs, work holding stuff, vice jaws, things like that. I also found out that one of my motors in my main extractor has blown. My NVD 750.
Oh.
So I spoke in a recent vlog video about the fact that it was on for possibly several days and it overheated. And I've been using it since then. But what I hadn't realised is that one of the motors isn't spinning anymore. So ordered a couple of new motors for it, which cost me £120-ish, I think. Because when I spoke to Pneumatic, who by the way were incredible, the customer service there, I was blown away by how helpful they've been. They basically said it's because of the age of the machine, you're better off replacing both motors rather than just one, which was fine. So I took that round to my mate who's a Sparky. He knows what he's doing with all of this electrical stuff. He wired in the two motors, powered it up, and only one of the motors was running still. So he kind of did some more electrical wizardry with his multimeter, whatever they're called, and he said both motors are working, but something's not working correctly. So went back to Pneumatic. We took loads of photos of the wiring, sent it through to them, and they said, oh, it looks like your PCB needs attention and you could possibly replace a suppressor as well. I mean, all of this is just a foreign language to me, but in other words, you know, I've spent another 70 odd quid on parts, which should hopefully be here today, I'm hoping, and then we'll get those fitted, and then hopefully it will be back in action again because I've really missed it.
It's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money compared to a new one.
Exactly, and like I say, I'm really fond of that thing, and if it was completely dead, I would probably buy another one. And also, like I say, I'm just blown away by how helpful Pneumatic have been. And I like the fact that it's predominantly UK made, I think.
Yeah.
So they've kind of got all of the parts available, so when something does go wrong, they can source the right part. And I just like that. It's good.
I'm a big fan of them. I had the same extractor as you, but single motor. I liked that. I've had Henry Hoovers. I've got a James one at the moment, which is the same as the Henry, but it's a bit simpler. All these other vacuums for the house are just so complicated, and these whiz-bang features.
Yeah.
I had a Dyson when I used to run a pub, and it was just, they've got no bags, but they have loads of filters, and the filters need changing and cleaning. Having a bag is just so much simpler.
Yeah.
The one thing that stopped me getting the one you've got is the fact that they're not individually switched motors. I think if they were individually switched, that would make it perfect.
Yeah, why is that then?
So I bought myself, when I moved into the house, because I'd got rid of everything I owned, Record Power seemed to always do good deals at Christmas. So I bought the Workshop air filter, and I bought the Camvac twin motor machine, which I'd had before and really liked, but I had the wall-mounted one with a bag and a cage, and in a small workshop that just didn't work for me particularly. I got a bargain off eBay on it, so it was a really good machine, but trying to take it off the wall to do things and not be able to move it around, maybe in your workshop that'd work, but in my little one it didn't. So I bought the canister one, twin motor, and so with different hoses, if you could use it with a random orbital sander with one motor, and then with your planer thicknesser stick the second motor on, So I like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched your vlog, and I had the same thing happen when I was back in Hampshire.
Really?
I went away for a day, and it probably was that. No, it was a Henry Hoover.
Yeah.
And I had bought one of these cheap remote things, and it happened twice. But someone had heard it at the pub and gone in and turned it off.
Wow.
But I don't know, something must set them off. I don't know if it's, as you say, car key remotes, but something must set them off, because I know Peter Millard had exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But as convenient as it is to be able to remotely switch them, I've never used a remote switch again.
It's clearly far more common than I thought it was. And like you say, I think they operate on a 433 hertz frequency or something, which, you know, somebody unlocking their car on the same road could have set it off, or anything really. Obviously, I talked in the vlog video about possibly getting some kind of big red button that just shuts off all of the power supply to the workshop, and that would be the ideal solution. But I also got a few comments from people just saying, just put a smart plug on it. And I thought, well, for now, that's just such an easy solution, because I run a routine on my Google Home system that shuts off all power to everything in the house and the workshop, all of the smart plugs, I should say, every night before bed. And every time I leave the workshop, I say turn the workshop off. So a bit more peace of mind. It's not ideal, but it'll get me through until I can get something more permanent sorted.
That's a really good idea. So would you use the smart plug just to turn the power off, or also to operate it instead of the key fob? Because you could say whatever the name of your smart home thing is, turn extractor on.
I don't think I'd like doing that, mainly because Google Home is so bad at listening to what you say. So sometimes you have to ask it to do something like 3 times before it will hear you, or before it will hear you correctly. It's like often you'll ask it to play a particular song and it'll play something completely different. It's just really annoying.
So in my old workshop, I had the Amazon
Alexa.
I was trying not to say it because everyone's going to have their things flash.
That's true.
With the 7-inch screen one.
Yeah.
And then I had a camera on my windowsill by the front, so I could say the word show front door, and on the screen it would show a front of my house. So when I was doing something and I was waiting for delivery, when I was selling a lot of things, the couriers would turn up and I'd be able to see the van pull up. I mean, it's a difficult one. I don't want to give people bad habits, because you don't want to be looking at a screen while you're using machinery. But after you finish putting the wood through the tables or whatever, if you can glance up and go, is there a van there or is there not?
I do exactly the same actually with my CCTV system. I've got a phone and I can just lay it on the side and just keep an eye on it. Make sure I'm there if somebody comes. We mentioned a couple of episodes ago about, you spotted a dustless table saw on Amazon. I got an email from a lady the other day asking if I wanted to try one. So I'm now starting to think, would that be interesting to do, kind of like is this actually worth the money?
I would watch that, but then I've got a fetish for table saws.
It does intrigue me.
It'd be one of those infuriating videos because it would do incredibly well, and all you've done is open a box and talk about a thing. There was no creativity, there was no hard work, all the things you've put your heart and soul in that failed, and this one thing would do incredibly well.
That does seem to be the way it's going on YouTube recently, unfortunately.
Yeah. Instagram even more so. No one looks at my pictures anymore.
Apparently it kind of works in a way that if you pour money into advertising and stuff like that, then your content gets seen. If you don't, then it won't. And they've just completely killed that platform. And it's interesting the kind of life cycle you see of a social network, because when it starts, it's good. It's it works well. Eventually, it starts dying off, and I think at that point, the people that run these things just think, right, we need to try and cash in on this now. Before it completely dies, we'll just find any way we can of squeezing what profit we can out of it before it completely dies and everyone stops using it. Facebook went that way. Instagram is well on that journey now, I think. Yeah, and it's just such a shame, because Instagram was a brilliant platform.
And what do you think's the next thing?
I really don't know. I mean, I hate to say it, but I do really like TikTok. And I know it's got a terrible reputation out there. And I also know that there's obviously loads of data scandals and everything, which I'll admit I'm completely oblivious to Ignorance is bliss in a way, I guess. But as a platform, I really like it. I don't enjoy consuming content on it very much. I don't spend hours flicking through videos, but I like posting to it, and I've seen pretty good traction on there as well since I started it. I've had a few videos that have gone well over 300,000 views, and another few that have hit over 100,000. And whereas on Instagram, you're lucky to get sort of 10 to 15,000 views, really, I think.
Yeah, I saw you're killing it on there. But what I like about Instagram is just it's a friendly community. It's where I talk to people, as in you can direct message people and have conversations and actually deal with companies on there as well.
Yeah.
And I can't think of another platform that you do that on.
It's weird as well because everyone just seems nicer on Instagram. I mean, people talk about mean comments on YouTube, but realistically, I think once you kind of start establishing an audience, it is, for the most part, a really friendly place as well. I mean, I found with Facebook, the commenters are particularly nasty. And actually TikTok as well has got a really nasty side to it. I posted that video about a patio restoration, and man, some of the comments I got on there, I had to delete because they were just so nasty.
How bizarre. I've got a theory about Instagram, as in you can be on YouTube purely passive, as in you only go there to watch content. I think if you're on Instagram, you're probably posting things. And then you're much less likely to be nasty about someone because they can come back on your profile and be nasty about your stuff. And every time someone's nasty, I always look at them, and it always makes me feel better when I say, oh, you have actually no idea what you're talking about, and the stuff you do is much more amateurish than me. Or if someone's put something nasty in, then I look and like, oh, actually they're really good. Then it actually maybe have a point. But there's no need to be nasty ever, even if you don't like something. I had lots of interesting comments on my last video about the door. This is another podcast idea I had. Woodworking misconceptions.
Yeah.
So I saw Sean Everley he's very good at dealing with trolls. He doesn't suffer any falls. And he's amazing at what he does. So anyone that tries to pick him up on things is ridiculous. But the whole putting a hand plane down on its side thing, and people get so worked up about it. When I was on the Woodworking UK Facebook group, the two big things were the overhang on a shed roof for the rain and diagonal braces on doors and gates.
Interestingly, I think that's one of the unpopular opinions that we're going to be talking about later as well. Somebody commented on saying that they just can't stand these brace police people that comment on every single gate or door picture.
I must have had 50 comments about bracing. My house is full of doors that are well over 100 years old with no bracing on them. And the one I made has got no weight to it whatsoever, being in two parts. It's just such a non-issue. If something's really long and really heavy, like a 6-foot 5-bar gate, yes, you're going to need some serious bracing. I always talk about Jimmy Drester, but I do find him quite inspiring. People go, well, what if it breaks? And it just goes, well, I'll fix it then.
Yeah. Exactly. If it starts to sag, you'll put a brace in.
Yeah, exactly. And tell no one.
Yeah. I did brace the door on my shed that I built, and it has sagged. But the thing is, I don't think I braced it. This is going to be really difficult for me to explain. I don't know why I even opened this can of worms. But there's nothing for the brace horizontally to bear against. So I think what I should have done is more of a kind of framed brace, if that makes any sense, with a vertical piece for the brace to bear against, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, it's dropped, and now I need to figure out a way to lift it up again. But yeah, like you say, if things break, we fix them. That's what we do.
I'd also looked at lots of commercially available stable doors, none of which were braced. And but I think the comments are just people are saying things like, aren't they supposed to be braced? Just because clearly they've heard that and parroting an opinion. And it's such a weird thing. People hear things online and then go, that's the only way to do something.
Yeah, even when I built the frame of my shed, I got a lot of comments saying you need to add diagonal bracing into the frame of the shed. And that would, don't get me wrong, that would make it really incredibly rigid, but it's not necessary. I mean, the cladding is what adds the rigidity. That's kind of part of the reason why I did that run and jump test at the end of the video into the shed, just to show how rigid it is, because it doesn't need diagonal bracing. I mean, if you want to add diagonal bracing, go for it. It's going to basically then function as a bomb shelter. Brilliant. But, and if there's a tornado, then maybe it will be that little bit stronger and able to cope. But I don't know. It just seems a bit overkill to me.
Well, that's the joy of doing things yourself, isn't it? You can do it however you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you did it wrong, because you can do it how you want. Unless maybe you ask for my opinion on it, then I will try and help. But anyway, that's my rant for today. Probably not the only one, but I'll try and keep them down a little this time. I've got a new bandsaw, which is still in the box, from Axminster. But when I first got into woodworking, I bought the Record Power BS250, and I had it for about 5 years. And it was the one machine you know what I'm like. I'm always buying and selling machines, and it's the one thing I kept. But Axminster said, "Do you want to have this other one?" And they're going to offer me a good deal on it. So I thought, I'll be able to sell the other one and be even on the deal, but it's slightly higher spec. I think it was a bit more powerful motor and maybe a few mil extra cut capacity, and it was a good machine. But then I had the massive bandsaw that I restored in the garage, which was ridiculous. So I kind of had a small little machine that I'd put a smaller blade on for doing curves, and then the massive machine for resawing. But I can't keep having two bandsaws. That's ridiculous. I just want one bandsaw to do everything. They've rebranded their things. Is it Professional they call them, the range now? I'm going to have to go on the website.
Because it was Trade previously, wasn't it?
It was Trade, that's it. And I think they've gone for Professional. Yeah, Professional. So I've gone for one of their Professional machines, which just look lovely quality. It's got a 200mm depth of cut, more capacity than I had before. Certainly not as much as the... No, I say that. The big one, I think, could do 300mm. So it wasn't actually that big a depth of cut for a machine that was so huge. So I kind of feel it's an expensive machine, but this will be my forever bandsaw. It should be able to do everything I ever want. But it's still in the box because I want to film putting it together. So I've had to be very restrained not to look at it. I should be quite well sorted now with all my lovely Bosch tools and this bandsaw. A plainer thickness is the only thing I'm really missing now.
Until you see another Start Right bandsaw on Facebook Marketplace and go and pick that up.
No, but the trouble is I do look every day for things.
Well, I know this because you sent me a message a week or two ago about a machine that I would have loved to have had, and I inquired about it but never got a response, unfortunately. It was a drum sander that was locally to me, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was going to ask, but then I thought, I know the answer, otherwise you would have told me.
It's not often I get excited about a new machine, but I thought, I could actually create space for that, and it's something that I would genuinely like to have. Probably wouldn't show it in videos a lot. It's kind of one of those specialist tools that, again, not a lot of people are going to invest in, I think. But for kind of quick off-camera, I just hate sanding, basically, is the crux of the matter. So anything that will speed up that process is a good idea.
Yeah, it was a very good deal, so...
It was a total bargain. I'm sure someone probably beat me to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could have sold it for literally twice what he had it on for, so it was a silly, silly price. But that's a shame. I will keep my eye out.
So the last episode was all about woodworking unpopular opinions, and this week I actually thought of one that I really should have put into the show, I think. But this is potentially the most controversial one of all.
Ooh.
This is really going to stir up some hate, I think. And Matt, you're probably half aware of this already because I've been messaging you the last couple of days about it, asking for your advice on certain things. I hate routers. I don't hate them to the point where I wouldn't use them because they are a really useful tool. But there's lots of things about them that really drive me nuts. So yesterday... I'm trying to do a mortise and tenon project at the moment, and I wanted to do it with a spiral upcut router bit, but for that I would need to make a template with a guide bushing. So I basically got all of my routers and router accessories out on the workbench. I have 4 routers: Milwaukee trim router, Makita trim router, Hikoki M8V2, and a Trend T7, I think it is. And I have about 5 collets. I could only find 1 collet that fitted one of the routers. Actually, no, that's a lie. I found 2 in the end that fitted the routers. I don't know where the other ones came from, but they just didn't fit any of the routers that I've got. Then there was the frustration of not having the right collet size. So my router bit that I wanted to use was an 8mm one, and I only have an 8mm collet for one of those routers. Each router has a different spanner size for undoing where the bit goes for the chuck. The awkwardness as well of being able to access that chuck with the spanner, because you've got those 2 prongs either side of it and you have to find the hole with the spindle lock, and then you've got no travel on the spanner to try and loosen it, and you're kind of working in this close proximity and you can't get enough purchase on it. So you turn the router upside down and then there's a cord hanging out of the bottom of the router that gets in the way, and it's just all of these things. And I'm just thinking, why are these things, I understand that they have to be designed in a particular way, but it just seems like, I don't know, to me, maybe it's just the routers I have, or maybe it's just me being useless. I don't know what it is, but they don't half frustrate me. And this whole experience yesterday just made me realise, this is why I use other tools to achieve the same outcome, because I don't have to faff around this much.
I don't like routers either. Mainly I use them for roundovers and chamfers, but often I just round over corners with a random orbital sander, because I don't like perfection either, which no one's ever told me anything I've made is too perfect. Yeah, the little Bosch 12-volt one I've just got, that has a little button you pull out and it locks the spindle, and you don't have to hold it out or anything, it just keeps it there. That's one thing you don't have to worry about. The dust collection's always terrible on routers. You get these little plastic bits that seem such an afterthought, and the way they attach with this brittle, clear plastic, one little knock, it's going to shatter.
Yeah.
It's just not designed to be in a workshop. You can't have anything you have to baby. It's just got to work. Yeah, I think your point is standardization over things. A big thing for me is dust port standardization. And that might bring us in nicely to the sponsor of this video.
So in the last episode, we mentioned a new cyclone by CTS Central Technology Systems that we're both going to be fitting to our dust extraction systems soon. And we mentioned that we had no affiliation with them as a company, which was true at the time. But now CTS are kindly sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Matt and I have both been using the CTS Quick Click adapters for years now. I actually first found out about them through your channel, Matt, and I soon ended up getting one for every single power tool that I have.
It really is a brilliant system. Any woodworker will know the frustrations of having different sized, non-standard ports on all their tools, and to be able to connect a tool to a standard vacuum hose quickly with the press of a button is great. And they make a wide range of commercial and domestic vacuum systems and accessories. We will have a link to their website in the show notes, which is centraltechnologysystems.co.uk, and we have a discount code for you. You can use the code BANTER5, that's with capital letters, for 5% off all orders.
Thanks CTS for sponsoring this episode.
When I was having those issues with the router yesterday, first thing I did was messaged the group that we have on WhatsApp, and we're very lucky to have obviously Peter Millard in the group, who knows his stuff where routers are concerned, and also Robin Clevitt. Robin suggested I got the Unibase from Trend, which basically allows you to fit any normal standardised Trend collet.
Hi, Keith here. I actually meant to say guide bush, not collet.
Into this Unibase. But the trouble with that is, when I looked at the images, it looks to be, I don't know, maybe about 8mm thick. And I'm already pushing it, because by the time I put my template on, I'm going to lose some thickness, and then I've lost another 8mm, and I just don't think I'm going to have the plunge depth I need with that Unibase fitted. So not sure whether that's going to work. Then you suggested the kind of brass screw-on style of collet.
And again, guide bush, not collet.
And I found one that actually fits the Milwaukee router. And to be honest, the Milwaukee router is my preferred go-to router because it's just a little bit less intimidating, and it's also got the plunge base. I don't think I have a plunge base for the Makita one, so the Milwaukee one tends to be my go-to. And also I just feel safer with a cordless router. I don't know why that is.
It's one less thing to worry about, isn't it?
But there's something about an electronic, a motor with an electronic brake and everything that just feels safer to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I watch and admire people using routers all the time, and I just wish I had that same enthusiasm for using them because they just drive me nuts.
So what about a router table? Because you've built that one for your table saw wing. Do you feel the same about that?
I don't think I do, actually. I've really enjoyed using the router table, and I went years without one. I wouldn't say it was an essential tool for me whatsoever, but now I've got it. It does certainly open up some possibilities, and also I get a lot of comments on my videos saying, why didn't you use your router table for that? And usually it's because it never even occurred to me, because the router is always at the back of my mind for some reason.
I think it's quite a specialist tool, and I imagine I know I try to use the simplest tool I have if I can, just because it makes it more relatable. I've got that trend router table, and it's sat in my kitchen because I'm such a bachelor. But I think I spoke about it last time that I want to make a folding garden chair, and I want to round over all the slats for it. So that would be the first time I'm going to pull it out and do a lot of rounding over. But I think it'd be great for that. I mean, I could use the handheld router, but being able to set up the feather boards and just pass bits through is just going to be a lot better.
It's great for repetition, isn't it, and consistency. But yeah, I'm similar to you, really. I'll grab a trim router all of the time for roundovers. Also, rebates. I use them a lot for rebates, so for putting panels in the back of cabinets and things like that. I love cutting rebates. I've got a 50mm flattening bit as well for the T7 router, which I use for flattening slabs from time to time. But yeah, anything that requires a lot of setup, just for some reason is such a big turn off for me.
Well, that's why people have so many routers, like Peter.
I think he's got 13, hasn't he, or something?
Yeah, and back to Robin Clevitt, I imagine with his hinge jig, he just has one router permanently set up for doing hinge mortises.
Yeah.
So back to your mortises. I've never used a router, I don't think, to cut a mortise. What about a bearing guided bit?
That's a good idea, and I did think the same yesterday, but I just need more depth. And I think generally the 8mm spiral upcut bits are a bit longer, but I haven't researched that, so I probably should look into that, because if I could get one with a bearing at the top of the bit, if the router bit is up facing down, if that makes sense, then that could definitely do the job. But I just, sometimes I just think, right, Keith, you've got to get over yourself, push yourself, do something different. Let's try and tackle this whole guide bushings thing, and that's why I forced myself to try and do it. And then, that's where I got frustrated, and I end up thinking, there's just got to be an easier way.
Yeah, I've got a project coming up that I'm going to try and push myself on and do mortise and tenons as well.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try and use the drill press to cut them.
Oh, yeah. See, that's kind of what I thought yesterday, is that I spent so long messing around trying to find the right components for a setup that I probably could have just cut 4 or 5 of these mortises just using a force and a bit and a drill press and then chiseling them out. It's just because I need to cut so many of them that I thought, making a template should be the quickest way. But what is your project then?
It's a hallway boot rack bench.
For your house?
No, it's for my mum. She's got so much she wants done that I never get to do anything I want to do anymore. But I restored that nice start right drill last year, and I haven't used it much, so it'd be great to cut the mortises on that. It makes the project interesting for me to try new things.
Yeah, the temptation for me with with joinery like that is often just to opt for methods that can be easily set up on other tools. So, for example, the miter saw or the table saw. So for something like that, my tendency is to go to a half lap joint or a bridle joint or something like that, because I know it's going to be strong enough. Arguably not as strong as a mortise and tenon would be, but strong enough. But yeah, it'd just be nice if there was a more convenient way of cutting mortises, or you can obviously get the slot mortising machines, can't you, with the chisel bits and the drill bit in the middle that cut a perfect mortise, but they're not really machines that the average woodworker would have in their DIY workshop.
Yeah, they're always on Facebook Marketplace cheap.
Are
because
they?
I think people buy them and then go, I'd never use that thing. And that's the trouble. I can't justify the workshop space for a machine that you're not going to use very often.
Yeah.
So why are you not using the domino?
I don't think it will be strong enough for the application. So I'm doing some very large gates. But also I think it's a bit of a cop-out. If I use the domino, I kind of want to do something a little bit more skilled and also just different to what I've done in the past, if you know what I mean. So last time I made big gates, I just did half lap joints and that worked perfectly well. But I don't want to keep repeating myself.
So I hope this gate's going to be properly braced with some diagonals.
I'm thinking of actually doing the braces where you actually cut away a little bit of the horizontal rails as well. So you actually cut the brace into those rails just to give it complete rigidity. I'm not sure. It's one of those things where I don't want to spend too long on it. It would be nice to do it in a way that I know is going to stand the test of time.
So what are other people's unpopular opinions?
I've had a quick glance and we've got some really good ones up, but I thought it'd be good to go through and see which ones we kind of agree and disagree with, just for a bit of fun. Obviously, we're not saying that our opinions matter whatsoever, but it's just something to chat through and have some conversation on, which would be interesting. This one is from Richard Keith. My unpopular opinion is that I get bored with what I call the brace police on social media. They read one post on the correct way to brace a door and they are immediately experts on every kind of gate and door known to humanity. They are like children, worse, overindulgent parents, praised for something mediocre, and so they do it again and again.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. I think it's a weird psychology. I say people have, but it's mostly men, unfortunately, of if you can demonstrate that someone else is wrong, suddenly you are better than them. So you see people watch videos and they desperately search for something to pick you up on, and it makes them feel superior. And it's a bit annoying as a YouTuber. You spend a week making something and put a 10-minute video up and people just pick on the one negative in it. And most of these people have never made a door and a gate in their life.
Armchair critics.
Yeah, that's it.
Right, this is an interesting one from Bob Trevena. Unpopular opinion, not woodwork related, but I dislike intensely baseball caps and also wearing hats indoors. But I'm also an old fart from an age where a gentleman did not wear a hat indoors. So I think we're both guilty of this one, aren't we?
Yeah, I think he's listening to the wrong podcast.
I'm interested to know whether you wear a hat indoors for the same reason as I do, which is that basically we're on camera a lot and sometimes it's quicker to put a hat on than it is to sort my hair out.
That's exactly why I wear a hat. I'm actually kind of growing my hair a bit longer, so it looks awful at the moment. And if you've had a session where you've had your respirator on with the straps around your head and the ear defenders on, your hair is just awful. So I put the cap on. I'm not a big baseball cap fan. It's just practicality.
I wear them outdoors all of the time just because I want to protect my head, because skin cancer is something that's been in my family in the past, and I don't want to get that. So obviously there's that, but for indoors, yeah, it's purely a hair thing for me.
I have a hat which I call my sexy hat, and it's this big floppy sun hat that has a poppers at the back with this curtain on the back that goes over your neck.
Oh yeah.
So it looks absolutely horrific, but when I used to build shepherd's huts and working outside in the summer, it stopped any sun getting to the back of your neck. I always find the back of my neck is the bit that
gets sunburnt.
gets sunburnt. I've not been brave enough, I don't think, to wear it on film. Everyone's got personal taste, and it's fine if you don't like baseball caps. I do see the point on wearing them inside. The trouble is, I find if I'm wearing a hat outside and then come in and take the hat off, you've then got hat hair, so you just keep it on. I think I don't consider a workshop to be inside.
Yours is a tent, really, so
Yeah,
it kind
mine's
of is
a tent.
outside.
People hate my woolly hats.
Really?
Yeah.
I quite liked your woolly hats.
It's one of those things, I get so many comments about the ugly woolly hats, but it makes me double down on them. Like, a bit like your shorts.
It's all engagement, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I wear the yellow pineapple shorts, I know that I'm going to get 20 more comments on my video. So we've got a comment from Carl at Strawbite Workshop. He opens up with a statement of, at last someone else who doesn't get on with isotunes. Interestingly, that review I did on the isotunes ear defenders, I got a comment from isotunes yesterday, which I didn't expect at all, because the company that originally contacted me about isotunes was one of those kind of middleman PR companies. But it was actually isotunes that put the comment on, and they kind of said that they took the feedback on board. So that's always nice to see manufacturers actually receptive.
And everyone's different because, as I say, I've got some, and they're my favourite ear defenders. So it's really quite bizarre.
Yeah, I got a lot of comments from people who say they really like their isotunes as well. So it is just my personal opinion. And
yeah, but that's all you can do on a review, isn't it? You say how you feel about it.
Yeah. So on to Carl's unpopular opinions, of which we have a list of 5.
What?
The first is Anne of all trades, tiny shop is not tiny. I've got to admit, I wasn't familiar with Anne of all trades, but I had a look through some of her videos the other day, and I was really impressed by her content, actually. There was one about, it wasn't woodworking related, it was about composting, but I learned loads. It was a really good video. And yeah, I completely agree, Carl. Her tiny shop, should I say, is not tiny.
Anne is one of those terribly frustrating people that seems whatever she turns her hand at, she is excellent at it. Yeah, she's so talented, and it's a beautiful little shop, but it's not little. It's, I don't know, even for American standards, I don't think it's tiny.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was going to say, we have completely different standards of what is tiny and what isn't with our friends over in the US and Canada, but yeah, like you say, it's not tiny by American standards, really, is it?
Probably an average for an English YouTuber would be a single car garage size, but there'd be so many people in 6 foot by 4 foot sheds. I used to follow, he has not really produced anything well, 8x4 workshop. In fact, I think you did a...
Oh, yeah. Man, what he accomplished in that tiny space was incredible. The way he set up his workshop. I'll make sure I leave a link to this in the show notes, because it's a few years old now, and there'll definitely be people out there that won't have seen this. But yeah, you need to see this, because I found it so inspirational.
Yeah, and a lovely chap.
Great bloke, yeah. And of course, a lot of people don't have any workshop at all. They're just working on their patio. I mean, I remember when I first got started that I didn't even have a patio. I was in a maisonette flat, and I did most of the woodworking on my kitchen floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we agree with you on one, Carl. What else you got?
So the next one you might have to help me with, because I don't know what this means. The Womble Tobermory is a better maker role model than Jimmy DiResta.
Oh, do you not know of the Wombles of Wimbledon?
I know of them. I don't really know them individually by name.
I was very young when that was on TV. I can't believe it's not had a comeback, because what they used to do is go onto Wimbledon Common and pick up all the rubbish they found and repurpose it. So it seems so on trend these days with upcycling and recycling and sustainability. But the Wombles were ahead of their time, I'm saying it. Yeah, I don't really remember much, I have to say, but the Wombles need a comeback.
We could turn this into the Womble Banter podcast.
Yeah, well, if we could get some of the Wombles on, that would be great.
So would you say Tobermory is more inspirational than Jimmy DiResta?
I've literally just said all my Womble knowledge. Maybe like my earliest memories of watching the Wombles. I find Jimmy very inspiring, so maybe I'll go as far as saying they're on par with each other.
Number 3 is wearing gloves at the table saw is acceptable and is not specifically ruled out by the HSE. So I've not looked into that personally, so I don't really know. Obviously, the thing that you get criticised for potentially wearing gloves at the table saw is that they could potentially pull your hand into the machine. I don't really know any science behind that whatsoever. I don't know whether it genuinely is a risk or not. Any thoughts?
I don't. Also, I imagine the health and safety executive only applies to workplaces. But again, I might be totally wrong there. It's weird. If I'm using an angle grinder to, say, clean rust off something, and I'm wearing gloves, everyone would tell me you can't wear gloves. If I'm not wearing gloves, everyone tells me I should be wearing gloves.
Oh man, it seems quite safe with an angle grinder to me, because both of your hands are on the tool, aren't they?
Your hand should never be that close to the blade. I have worn gloves, but why I'm wearing gloves will be because it's freezing cold in the workshop, back in the Hampshire one with no heating. And I would conclude, if I can't feel my hands because I'm so cold, that is more dangerous than wearing gloves.
You have to just do your own risk assessment and make your own decisions, don't you? And be accountable for them decisions.
Yeah. I can't stand safety police. It's everyone's own responsibility.
That reminded me of a video I once saw where somebody did a demonstration with long sleeves at the table saw. I don't know who did it, but they put these shirt sleeves on some sticks and kind of dangled them near a table saw blade to see whether it would get sucked in. And the motion from the blade spinning actually pushed the sleeve away from the blade, which was quite interesting. Not that I'm suggesting that anyone goes near a table saw with long sleeves, obviously. But it was, do you know who that video was by? I saw you nodding, so...
I know, I'm just, that was just a polite nod.
Oh, okay. If I can find it, I will put a link to that as well, because that was quite interesting.
I've definitely seen a planer pull someone's arm in.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You've actually seen that?
I think it was on, like on some social media thing, like on TikTok or Instagram videos. No blood. They managed to stop it, but
I saw a video once where somebody had their planer set up in the garden, and they were feeding timber through, and the machine kind of wobbled and started to tip over. So he reached to grab the machine and put his hand on the blades, and it was horrible. Which just goes to show that it's not always necessarily the PPE that you're wearing or anything like that. Sometimes we act on instincts, and you need to have your machines completely steady and stable.
it is the instincts are the things that get you, as in how many times has something like a chisel rolled off the bench and you have gone to catch it?
Yeah.
Because that's your instinct. No, you just let it fall.
Yeah.
Don't try and catch the sharp thing.
Number 4, it's not necessary to reinforce mitre joints with splines. They only add a decorative element to a joint which is plenty strong enough with just glue.
I'm going to agree and disagree. It depends on the purpose of the mitre joint. If we're talking picture frames, which is probably the most common, no, there's no need whatsoever. You're putting it in the frame, you whack it on the wall, it's never going to come apart. But I just made a double glazing window unit with mitre joints. They're heavy, those, and I reinforced them with dowels. I would want that joint to be reinforced. You could make kitchen cabinet doors. I would also say they're pretty heavy use. I'd probably want them reinforced. So I would say Carl is right on the picture frames, but if I was using it for something more heavy duty, I'm very much belt and braces.
Yeah, I would agree. So we're basically saying depends on the application kind of thing. Yeah. I suppose it depends on the glue to some extent as well.
And I'm a big fan now of V-nails. Have you used those for picture framing?
They're not the penis clamp things, are they?
No, not the penis clamps. They're nails, but they're a bit of metal that's in a V, and you whack them in on the back of the frame over the joint.
Almost like a staple type thing.
Yeah, almost like a staple.
Oh, right.
And it's very old school technology, but it's just, they're so cheap. And I was looking at, before I did it, I was looking for the tools to do it, and you can just get like an arbor press thing where you just pull the handle down and it just pushes them in if you're making loads. And I was like, shall I buy one of those? I just bought the nails, like, oh, you just tap them with a hammer and they go in fantastically. Yeah, it gives you that peace of mind. You'll see them on most commercial frames you buy.
Yeah.
On the back.
Number 6, a pocket hole that nobody is going to see is fine. I would generally agree with that.
I'm not snobby. If you like pocket holes, they're absolutely fine.
Yeah. Even if it's a pocket hole that people are going to see, if you're happy with it and you like it.
I'm a big Laura Camp fan, and she will make some fantastic things with lots of exposed screws. There's a lot of snobby woodworkers that hate to see a screw and it's not proper woodworking. Like, there's nothing wrong with exposed screws, and I look at quite high-end furniture with exposed screws.
I kind of agree with that, although I wouldn't say I liked seeing screws, but often it depends on the screws as well. If you've got some, if you've got some brass screws, possibly with a brass washer as well. I've got a massive thing for brass, I have to say. I love brass.
I love
think
brass.
It's such a beautiful... Give me brass over gold any day.
Oh yeah, I can't stand gold. Brass screws are a nightmare to work with though, aren't they? How many times have you snapped a head off a
They're
brass
soft.
screw?
Yeah, they're very soft.
Even pre-drilling the hole, and then I got into pre-drilling holes and driving in steel screws first to cut the threads, and still... And you can feel yourself doing it. You can just feel that last little tweak, and then you know that's it, you've gone too far.
But I see that softness as an advantage because you can use woodworking tools on brass and they're absolutely fine. I mean, I've even routed out brass before using I can't remember if it was a roundover bit, but it routed out just fine.
Yeah, I've cut quite a lot of brass on the bandsaw.
Yeah.
Just going to have a fine-tooth blade. So I've treated myself this week for my garden chair build. I wanted some silver-coloured screws, so I went for some spacks. I've never bought spacks before. They're twice as expensive as what I'd consider an acceptable screw to be.
Yeah.
I think cheap screws are rubbish, but they've got this Torx head, which I think looks really nice, actually, because when you tighten a screw up and you try and get it so they all line up the same way?
Yeah.
I think that's less important with the Torx head. They always look nice. So I'm going to see how I get on with them, because all the reviews, people are going, best screws ever. And I wonder if it's a bit like Osmo, as in people are just conditioned to think the most expensive screw is the best. But I know Peter Millard rates spack screws, and I very much trust his opinion.
This is really interesting to me because, and then this might be another unpopular opinion, but cheap screws for me are all I buy. All I ever have bought. Cheap screws. I could count the occasions when I've broken one probably on two hands in 6 or 7 years of doing this continuously. So I don't know. Saying that, I got given some Torx head stainless steel screws that were quite long, and I found those had a tendency to break more so than my cheaper screws.
Yeah, they seem to be more brittle.
Yeah. Interesting. But yeah, I just buy the cheapest of the cheap every time.
Well, if you never find them frustrating, that's fine. Maybe treat yourself to a box of spacks for £6 or something. The trouble is they've developed their own proprietary bit to go in them, so they're Torx, but
in
with a little...
In that case, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Anyone who does that, no, I don't want to get involved. If it's not standardised, I don't want it in my life.
I agree. So back when I was doing shepherd's huts, I was a fan of the riser cutter screws, if that's the correct way of saying it. They're very good quality, but not as expensive as spacks. And I think for a whole shepherd's hut, maybe spending £160 on screws.
Yeah.
And that's quite a few years ago. Trying to make some profit on them. So next time I went for pretty much the cheapest screws available from, I don't know, Toolstation or Screwfix. And it got it down to 80 quid. So it's a big old saving.
I'm assuming you didn't use all of those screws on the shepherd's hut, did you?
Oh, yeah.
160 quid just in screws on a shepherd's hut.
If you're starting to buy like 5 by 100 screws...
Oh, yeah, they are really long, aren't they? Yeah.
They're expensive. You can buy a tub of 200 in maybe 20 quid or something. I have no idea how much they were, but if you're using quite a lot of long screws, you really crank through the money.
Wow.
Like this garden room, I've used over 1,000 screws.
Yeah.
But so I tried using the cheap screws, and I just found it so frustrating. I'd carry them out, I'd strip the threads and stuff. I don't know if I was using the impact driver. I think I was at the time, and impact drivers don't tend to do that as badly. I contacted a company recently about their screws because I had quite a few in the box that it was just spinning in the bit, and then I looked into it was PZ2 cut into it, and it just had a little knobble in the bottom, and it meant the bit didn't seat properly, and there was quite a few in the box that did that. It's okay, so you've wasted money because they're completely useless, those screws can't be used, but it's just frustrating. And maybe if you're up a ladder doing something, you just want that screw to work.
Yeah. I've had screws before in a box that have had no thread cut into them.
Yeah, I've had that.
It's really weird.
There's quality control issues on the cheaper ones. I don't know. I find the little things frustrate me. I stopped buying cheap screws, and then I kind of went back and you can get some really good value screws. Right, how did we go on to screws?
I don't know.
Cheap abrasives frustrate me as well. In fact, I think cheap abrasives are a false economy.
I completely agree there, yeah. Actually, I had a guy working around my house, and he just left some scraps of 3M sandpaper laying around. And I've still got those scraps, and I'm still using them, and this was several years ago.
Yeah.
They just, the paper is so thick, it's 80 grit and it cuts through anything. It's, night and day above any other sandpaper I've ever used. I'm going to invest in some of that in future, because I usually buy the kind of mid-range stuff. I think it's Kling Spore, or however you say it.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
It's decent, yeah, but it doesn't last anywhere near as long as the stuff that this guy left around. I'll have to try and dig out because I think there's another brand name on it other than 3M. I'll try and find out what it is, and I'll put that in the podcast now, if I can find the name. Hello, Keith here again. So this sandpaper is by 3M. It's green in colour, and on the back it says 3M 245 production resin bound. And I've just searched for it online, and it's about twice the price of what I usually buy. But honestly, the amount of use I've got out of those few scraps that I had, I think it's well worth it.
So when I lived in Alton, there was a kind of a decorating supplies thing in the industrial unit. They would do all the colour mixing and stuff, and had a little showroom, and the abrasives they sold were really good. I think anyone that only sells pretty much to trade, they don't sell rubbish.
Yeah.
Because time's money. You want the stuff that just works.
Yeah. Unpopular opinion from our friend Stu at Bish Bash Bosh. I think Paul Sellers does indeed have elitist moments with regard to hand tools, especially the last year or so. Caveat being, his information is still valuable. I heard him say often people say you can't do this with hand tools or quickly. Who? No one I've ever seen. Thing is, I've seen a piece of his proper furniture. The joinery was far beyond the quick methods that he demonstrates to sell the authenticity of hand tool joinery. He puts serious time in on serious pieces. It's a lifestyle process these days, something to enjoy. Running a joinery business is different though. Hand tools always have their place and are essential to learn to understand the craft and material, but they are not the only route to true craftsmanship. Sorry, bit of a rant. You started it. People should still watch Full Sellers. I can't help but read that comment in Stu's voice in my head, because I've watched so many of his videos. Do you know what I mean?
With the music from a couple of years ago playing.
Yeah.
Well, I can't disagree with anything he said there. Yeah, people that try and say that hand tool work can be as quick as power tools and stuff, and trying to prove it, it's just not true. And the learning curve. I could teach someone how to plane and cut pieces of timber to length using power tools in a couple of hours. To achieve that using hand tools is going to take you years. Well, you see these courses, people that kind of do a pallet wood course. They turn up in the morning, never use tools. At the end of the day, they've built, I don't know what, something, and they've got something to take home with them. You can only do that using power tools. And I think that's really nice. You want to achieve something.
You might be able to carve a spoon if you had a day or so.
That's very true.
That's simple and basic, but yeah, you're right. If you wanted a piece of furniture to take away at the end of the day, then yeah.
I say I like Paul Sellers, and I find him very useful. I aspire to learn all this stuff, but also I don't have the time.
I think Stu clearly, is an admirer of Paul Sellers' work as well. I'm quite jealous that he's got to see an item of furniture made by him, because I would love to see something that he's made. So this is from Animation Creations 42, but I did ask him to elaborate on a couple of these because I wasn't sure what he meant by one or two of them. First one is, if you need to buy plans to make something, you might as well just buy from IKEA. So I asked for some clarity on that. He says, for me, designing something is just as important as the actual building of it. Following a plan feels like cheating, like painting by numbers. I can see his point, but I also think some people might not be getting into woodworking for that level of creativity. Some people might just want a table that they can use, and if they can take pleasure in making that table, following a set of plans and then using that table, I think that's awesome. But also I see the other side of the argument that design is such a big part of making something and creating something. So I'm going to sit on the fence on that one as well.
I think, for me personally, I would have no interest whatsoever of ever making anything off plans. That just doesn't appeal to me. But clearly it does to others. I see people selling plans or even selling courses, and people just want to make the thing. I mean, people love Lego.
Yeah.
And you just want to follow the instructions and make the thing. So that suits some. In fact, I was playing Lego with my nephew the other week, and I quite enjoyed that. Not that he let me play much.
And the next one is, there's no such thing as a maker. So again, I asked for clarity on that one as well. He said, I'm not a fan of collective terms in general, but maker in particular annoys me. It just seems to be a catch-all. Is there anything that wouldn't be covered by the term? Is a chef a maker because they make food? I would personally prefer people are more descriptive when saying what they do, i.e. woodworker, metalworker, etc. I think I'm going to disagree with that one, because there's a positive aspect of having a catch-all kind of name, and that is that you're not restricting yourself in the things that you do. I don't think I've got an issue with the name maker. Have you?
No, I don't. And I think I quite like the vagueness. I follow quite a few ceramicists, potters on Instagram, and a lot of leather workers and metal workers and blacksmiths. They're all makers. I enjoy anyone that makes things. I don't just enjoy woodworking. And you've got things in common with these people. It's being creative and doing something with your hands. We've been to events and I've spoken to people that are into knitting. I never thought I'd be interested in talking to people that are into knitting, but I am. When people ask me what I do say I'm a woodworker. I'd never say I'm a maker.
Yeah, I probably do as well. Yeah. Okay, the next one. Painted MDF looks nice. I would agree.
I would agree. I mean, I'm looking at your backdrop now. You've got painted walls. I mean, they could be MDF, or I'm assuming it's plaster. It could be ply. Yeah, I've just made my small parts thing out of MDF. If you're going to paint it and you want flat panels, why not use MDF? It's the cheapest option at the moment and is incredibly stable.
I mean, I definitely have a preference for wood, but I mean, I made a desk for Ria a year or two ago. Used a combination of paints that I think Peter Millard recommended to me, the Leyland acrylic primer, followed by the Leyland hard-wearing acrylic eggshell. And I applied it with a roller, and it gave the MDF a little bit of texture, which I really like. And also it seems to be so durable. She's using that desk every day. Her mouse is constantly, in a circle on a certain area of the desk. You would not be able to tell where that mouse was. It's that durable. So, yeah, I agree. Looks nice. Functions well.
Edges are always the problem, aren't they, on MDF, as it really soaks the paint up.
It does, yeah. But, I mean, even then, a bit of denibbing, another coat or two. I mean, I've seen videos where people have got incredible results on the edge of MDF just by doing that, and I've had good results doing that too. It's one of those things that I don't think is as problematic as people make out. You just got to be a bit patient with it, I guess. And also you get a lot of these products, don't you, with MDF sealers and stuff like that. I just don't really think they're necessary personally. But
no, you just need a few more coats.
Yeah.
No, MDF is fine. I'm not saying I like it as a product, because I don't enjoy working with it.
Yeah, same.
The dust's horrible, and screws don't work with it as well, I find, as in, even if you drill pilot holes, it's so easy to split. It's just, you look at it the wrong way and it wants to split.
It does if you go into the edge grain, yeah. I mean, screws hold incredibly well through the face, don't they? But
oh, yes.
Through the edges, it's just a bit of a nightmare. You have to always kind of overcompensate for your pilot hole a bit, don't you? If you see someone selling something as rustic on Facebook, it means it's crap. I would have to disagree, I think. It doesn't always mean it's crap. I think it can mean that it's been made in a rustic style.
I like rustic things. Like I like going to antique shops and there's battered old things with bits of rust on. So I'd probably describe that as rustic. But yeah, I think there probably is a lot of things on Facebook that are terrible called rustic. So my pet hate is old woodworking tools turned into lamps.
Yeah, I can see that.
I was in this WhatsApp group with people and we basically just shared the ones, and some of them are horrific. And I'd seen, I think it was on Money for Nothing, there was this chap that used to do it and did some beautiful work. I think it's kind of got a bit played out as a concept, but turning this beautiful old drill or wooden hand plane just by screwing a bulb holder to it, I think it can look terrible, and there's a lot of them about.
12-volt tools are powerful enough for most applications. 20-volt drills and impact drivers aren't worth the extra weight unless you're driving massive screws. Completely agree.
I completely agree too, but I'm looking at getting an impact driver and I've got the 12-volt and the 18-volt system. Which do I go for? And my thinking is there's really hardly any difference. Like the 12-volt impact is £100 and the 18-volt is 130, but comes with a nice box, which costs 30 on its own. But those times where I do need to drive those long screws, it will do it. So, yes, you're right, but if you could only have one, which would you go for?
Yeah, that extra bit of grunt comes in handy sometimes.
In tight spaces as well, the more compact tools are great. I like the more compact tools. They're just nicer to hold and use. Most of our listeners are probably woodworkers, so if you're just doing a few bits in a workshop, 12-volt is absolutely fine. If you're into more construction, perhaps you want the more heavy-duty. I also feel they're just... the whole tool feels more robust. I don't think I've ever broken a tool.
Really?
I mean, I bought a belt sander from Wix and it gave up very quickly. But no, I don't think I've ever bought a new tool because the old one packed in.
Wow. I've been thinking about it. I've only broken maybe... I can think of two, but I'm sure there's a third.
Yeah, so they're more of the consumer level products, aren't they?
Yeah.
As if you'd gone for any of the big name brands, I don't think... you had Makita for years, and nothing broke, and now you've had Milwaukee for years, and the way anyone in a workshop's using them, you're not dropping them off ladders on building sites, are you?
I had the Hikoki impact driver. There was a small plastic casing bit that broke off the front of the impact driver, but the tool was absolutely fine. That's the only thing I can think of with a trade grade tool. Yeah, they just don't break, do they?
Yeah, I've got a Bosch drill, and in my head, I've not had it long, but I've moved house twice with it, so I've had it over 5 years, and it's got bits of glue and paint on it and stuff, but it's still absolutely fine. And I bet when I bought it, I never expected it to last 5 years, but to be honest, it might do another 5.
Yeah. Ferrex, Workzone, Parkside tools are reliable. And when they do break, the warranty is better / easier to deal with than the big brands.
Yeah, I have absolutely zero experience. I've never had one. They look, I forget which one it is. I think it's the Parkside. They look like the Bosch 12-volt ones. Like they're exactly the same, but I imagine they're not. Have you used them?
Those brands particularly, only Parkside and not many of them. But I can't really comment on it either because, I've used tools in that price bracket before, but this was years ago. Things might have changed since then.
I don't know how the warranties work either, as in if you have to walk in and there's no customer service desk in one of these outlets.
I think it's just a 3-year thing, isn't it? So if something happens to it within 3 years, you can take it back and they'll either replace it if they can or they'll give you your money back. I think that's how it works.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to have to go and queue up, holding up the queue, doing it. I bet most people don't take them back. I don't know if you can do it via email.
I suppose it's okay if you're doing your weekly shop there and you're going to be there anyway.
Yeah, you can't be snobby about tool brands. I think from the ones that look like the Bosch ones, they're literally under half the price of the Bosch ones. And if you need, I don't know, 4-6 tools, suddenly you're saving a lot of money. And if that's going to get you started in the hobby, then
go
for it. Yeah.
I've got a hard disagree with this one. Sanding is relaxing.
Wow, that is controversial.
Can we hire them to come and do our sanding for us? Because
We'd be doing them a favour.
I can't stand sanding. It just takes so long. If you want to do it properly and if you want to get, excellent results, it takes hours.
And there's nothing creative about sanding. I mean, you might be able to disagree with this a bit, but it's not technical. At least when you're passing lots of pieces over the planer or table saw, you've really got to concentrate on what you're doing. As sanding, I don't know, it's just boring. You don't have to concentrate much, and it's noisy and dusty, and yeah, there's nothing I like about it.
The weird thing is generally I quite like monotonous jobs. I if I have to wrap parcels, for example, like I sell a lot of pots of wax. If I've got a batch of 10 pots to wax, I will actually look forward to doing that. I know it sounds really sad. And there's other jobs like that I just enjoy doing around the house. But sanding, I think for me it's because of the slowness of the progress. So if you're painting something, you can immediately see. Painting is another good example. I quite enjoy painting. I know a lot of people don't, but I enjoy it because you get the satisfaction of seeing it when it's done, and it's quite a fast process, whereas sanding is just so slow. I think that's what I hate about it the most.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like audiobooks, but I can't really listen to them while I'm filming a YouTube video because you're putting your ear defenders on for 10 minutes at a time where you make that cut or do that. And if I leave my ear defenders on while I'm doing something else, everyone goes mental in the comments that I've got ear defenders on while I'm painting.
Yeah.
So when I was decorating my bathroom, I was like, I'm really looking forward to just having a few hours of painting where I can listen to an audiobook, but I never look forward to sanding.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you watched Stumpy Nub's latest video or one out a few days ago. Where
Was
he
that the one about the sander?
Yeah, I thought of you because it looks a lot like the Merker.
Yeah, I have to say I didn't really enjoy that video because I felt it was too salesy. It didn't really feel quite authentic enough for me. There's something about it that bothered me for some reason.
I do feel that these days he doesn't produce a video unless he's earning some money somehow.
Yeah, there's some sort of commission there for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of rubbed me up the wrong way a little bit. I completely agree with the premise that a premium sander, like the 3M one that he showed, the Merker, the Festool, are in a completely different league to most of the sanders that you'll spend £100 on. I honestly do believe that's true. They sand faster, they're nicer to use, they're more comfortable, less vibration, less dust, lower profile. I could go on and on. But yeah, it felt too salesy for me. I didn't like it. This one's from Michael Dulloway. My unpopular opinion: having different battery systems is a good thing. Small batteries in some nimble tools, big batteries for stationary tools like table saws, medium weight batteries to drills, etc.
I mean, I'm doing what he's saying, but I'm not sure I'm happy about it.
Yeah, me too. If they could all be the same battery platform, I think I'd be happier.
When I was looking at battery platforms, I knew I had quite a lot to do in the garden. So Bosch professional batteries, they don't have a garden range. So I bought the Bosch green strimmer, so I'm going to have a different battery platform for the garden stuff. I just went for the Bosch because I trust it as a brand. And I think you did a video about all these tool brands on Amazon the other day, and there was definitely cheaper options, but things I'd never heard of. So many brands I'd never heard of, and I just didn't want to buy any of them.
I've got the Bosch green strimmer, the hedge trimmer, and the vacuum cleaner, and I've been happy with them.
So you've got 2 different Milwaukee battery platforms.
Yes.
Bosch green.
Yes. So the Bosch green is just a house thing.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So I keep that completely separate. But yeah, Workshop, Makita, Milwaukee, Ryobi, But I also use the Makita for the lawn mower because I've got a Makita lawnmower. There is a Milwaukee lawnmower, which I would really love to have. I can't really justify asking for it because I'm not going to make a video about it.
I don't know, it could be your best ever video, Keith mows his lawn. So yeah, you've got way more battery platforms than I have.
I'd love to whittle it down, believe me. But now I've got the Makita lawnmower, I can't see myself ever getting rid of the Makita. I think if I was going to get rid of any of them, it would be the Ryobi, because I've literally just got that for the glue gun. And a lot of people just tell me to get these battery adapter things so that you can fit either a Makita or a Milwaukee battery to the Ryobi hot glue gun, which is probably a very good idea.
See, I almost wish I'd bought a Ryobi strimmer because they do I think it's a 20-inch fan.
Yeah.
My workshop is very warm in the summer. In fact, like I went out there this morning to open up, you unzip it and the heat just hits you.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking one of these big fans would be great.
I've got a Milwaukee 18-volt fan, and I use it an awful lot in the summer. It's such a handy thing to have. I use it for drying finishes as well, so if I spray varnish on, I'll pop the fan on and it'll dry it in no time. Just having that extra bit of airflow in the room speeds up the process no end. And I get a lot of comments saying, you're blowing dust all over your freshly sprayed surface. It's like, actually, it doesn't work like that. I've never had an issue with dust settling from the result of a fan being on. It just moves, it seems to move air. I don't know the science behind it. Maybe it should put dust on it, but it doesn't seem to in my experience.
Unfortunately, Bosch don't do one, but I think I'm going to have to buy one because it's going to make it tolerable to work in there.
Yeah.
You can get ones that just have internal batteries that charge, because they're really low power fans. I didn't realise how little power they use.
What have you been watching, Matt?
Not much, actually, because I've been away at that wedding. The groom actually has been listening to the podcast.
Really?
So I just wanted to give the big dog a shout out.
Congratulations, big dog.
He's on his honeymoon at the moment, doing up in Scotland. So he might not be listening. I mean, why would you not be listening to this podcast on your honeymoon? I found a little channel. I can't remember what I was looking up. It must have been some kind of camera thing. So this is going to be a bit off topic for woodworking. He's only got 5.73 million subs.
Wow.
But I'd never heard of him. Peter McKinnon. Really nice videos. I've only watched a few so far. I only came across him last night. About cameras and filming and all sorts of nice stuff. And I think he does do the occasional bit of making of things. I'm always trying to up my game. I really struggled with the colour temperature in the tent thing. It's, you set it and then the sun comes in or goes out and it changes, and I think I've changed the colour profiles on the camera and I'm getting it. It's much better in recent videos, but it's been a real struggle. But it frustrates me because I want my videos to look good.
Yeah, the whole white balance thing, I know what you mean. Yeah, I used to struggle with that as well.
I had it so everything looked all right in the workshop, but then as soon as you go outside, everything looks bright red.
Yeah.
And everything inside then looks green, and it's been awful. But the trouble is, it'd all be fine if I could keep the door closed, but then I would die of dehydration within about 10 minutes. It's so hot in there. So what have you been watching? How many have you got this week?
I've got two, I think. So the first is a build that Carl Pope did recently with a mid-century modern style chair that he made with pine. I thought the design of the chair was really nice. It looks fantastic. It doesn't look like pine, if you know what I mean. It looks like some kind of hardwood. But yeah, the design of the chair, he did these corner bevel details kind of on an angle. I can't really put it into words. It's one of those projects you really need to see. But yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Second was a channel called Woodworking by a friend of mine called Dean, who I went to visit a few months back just to have a look around his workshop. He did a build where he made kind of like a room divider, and he did some housings to accommodate this, I think it's called fiberboard stuff. It's just a simple room divider, to keep his dog from infiltrating the rest of the house, I think it was. Fantastic little project, and I really like Dean's enthusiasm and his passion, and also his presenting style. He comes across as kind of like you're there with him when he's talking to you. It's just really relatable and nice to watch. His videos just get better and better as well. So yeah, those are my two for this week.
Excellent.
Thank you for listening. You can find Keith on YouTube by searching for Rag N Bone Brown and me by searching for Badger Workshop. We have a Patreon page if you'd like to help support us in making future episodes of the podcast. Link to that in the show notes. And we have a Workshop Banter Instagram and Facebook page if you'd like to get in touch, which is @Workshop Banter, all one word.